How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a look at Paranormal Activity 4. This is from 2012 and is directed by Henry Joost and Ariel Schulman, the same directors as Paranormal Activity Part 3. This movie stars Kathryn Newton, Matt Shively, Aiden Lovekamp, and Bradley Allen. So yeah, getting to part 4. If you guys don't know, I'm one of the people that kind of considers the original 6 Paranormal Activity movies in 2 trilogies. Part 1, 2, 3, that's really good. Those are classic found footage horror, and I really love them, and I think Part 3 was definitely the series high. 4 through 6 always seemed like disappointments. You know, they were always kind of underwhelming. They never hit the original 3. They were a little aimless, and I remember not liking them super much, and I haven't seen them in years and years until I decided to do this rewatch, and I was really curious what it would be like to go back and pop in Paranormal Activity Part 4, and I think it's basically this. If you had just told me this was a found footage movie, and it wasn't connected to the other Paranormal Activity movies, if it was its own unique thing, I would have said it was a found footage B-side. It's not terrible, it has a few moments, and it was totally watchable. It wasn't super boring or anything, but ultimately, it wasn't super scary, and it was kind of forgettable. But if it was independent, I would say found footage B-side, nothing more, nothing to be upset about. But it's not. It's part of Paranormal Activity. This is the series that started this big found footage boom, and they've been turning out some really good material, with Part 3 being the best in the series. So when you go from that high all the way down to this low, it does feel like you've sunk a lot farther. And again, I don't want to say it's a bad movie, it's just underwhelming and not super scary. And there's a few things we have to address here, some big issues. First, Part 1 through 3. They were all tied together, and each movie looked at its lore from a slightly different angle, and we would learn a little bit each time, and they all were pretty tightly knit. Part 4 starts off and it's just, hey, here's a new family that Hunter wandered into, and it seems kind of random and unrelated. The characters have very little to do with the past characters, and in turn, I'm not as invested and I'm not as curious about what's going to go on. It really does feel like, okay, we gotta make something up, let's do it now. And also the main leads are teenagers. And if you remember me talking about Paranormal Activity 2, there was a teenage girl in that one that actually had an interesting story. She was investigating the ghost because her mother had passed away, and she was wondering maybe she's still out there. It was a good idea, but it was super underdeveloped. This one made them less developed and gave them the whole movie. The main characters are a girl and her boyfriend who, other than wanting to solve the mystery, they don't really have much going on for them. I mean, they're nice enough kids and they're not horrible leads to follow, but I just wish they had something going on. I wish they were more interesting. And in turn, the parents and like the adults were the lead of every other Paranormal Activity. I don't even know if I'd recognize their faces if I saw them in something else. They're barely in the movie, they have next to nothing to do, and also are super, super unhelpful. Like, whenever they try to go to the parents for anything, nothing at all happens. So you took who was your normal lead, reduced them down to nothing, and these new teenage leads just aren't really great. And the thing is, I can't help but feel that this was a studio trying to be young and hip because teens love Paranormal Activity. Let's put teens in the movie. Still gonna make it rated R for some reason. I honestly don't know why the paranormal movies are rated R other than the language. But also, the teens liked it the way it was. Whenever you change something to try to make it appeal more to the youth, boy, does that very seldom ever worked. Now, the one thing that is going for this movie, the movie's highlight, is the lasers. Basically, the family has an Xbox Kinect, and in order to sense your movement, it sends out a little laser grid, and they find that when you turn on the night vision camera, you can see the lasers, which will lead to some cool scares as the ghosts move around and you see them through the lasers. And actually, after this movie came out, I would start to see more real-life ghost hunters using the laser grid, although you don't actually see the ghost moving through the lasers in real life, you just see the inputs on the screen, but it's still cool, it's a good idea, it's one of the few things I remember positively about Paranormal Activity 4, so it's not the worst thing ever, but man, just a step down with the characters and the scares and the lore. It's just kind of unrelated, kind of forgettable, and just not near as good as the first three were. Let's talk a bit about the plot in order to analyze it. I'm not going to do any major spoilers. I do want to take apart and look at a few plot points, but I don't have to spoil the end to do that. So let's take a bit of a deeper dive. We open up with a section connecting it to Paranormal Activity 2. We see Katie and Hunter by the pool, and she gives him a necklace. Not really a super important scene, but hey, new paranormal footage, okay. And then we get a bit of a recap as to what happened in the past movies, which I really don't mind. I mean, I am watching these kind of back-to-back right now, but if it had been a whole year since I saw the last one in the theaters, I honestly don't mind a recap segment. But then we get into this family, and it's a completely new family. The mom and the dad is growing distant. We first see him when he's late to his child's soccer game, but that's about it. And that's the thing with their characters, is their characters are cold and distant and not paying attention to their family, but in turn, that makes them barely characters in the movie. Whatever. We have an older daughter and her boyfriend. Those will be the two leads, and then we'll have the younger son, Wyatt. Now, they're in their house, and there's a weird kid living across the street named Robbie. And Robbie, yeah, he's kind of a weirdo. He's your prototypical creepy kid in a horror movie. And he lives across the street with Katie. And I do want to say, can I overanalyze this a little bit? In the world of Paranormal Activity, after the first one came out, how do people not recognize her? Because remember, in Paranormal Activity 1, they open up with Paramount wishes to thank the families of. They try to say, this is real, but that implies that in the universe of Paranormal Activity, the movies did come out. I guess they weren't near as huge of a hit as they were in real life, because if there was a teenager, they would have probably seen Paranormal Activity, and you're telling me you have two teenage leads and the star of Paranormal Activity is living next door? I mean, how did Katie stay a missing person after the first movie came out? And also, even though she's possessed, she lives a relatively normal life? Like, I would have thought she would have been a wild woman living in the woods, but apparently no, she has a house, so presumably a job somewhere to afford it, unless the cult's paying, and she's just normal? Okay, side rant over, let's get back to the movie. And all of a sudden, there's ambulances across the street, something happened to Katie, she's in the hospital, can you please take Robbie in? And Yeah, no, they just kind of do. You think they would contact the next of kin or something, but I guess because of the whole, missing person thing. But it is super weird that, like, the young kid in this family just already has a bunk bed for some reason, so there's a place for him to sleep, and he just kind of walks across the street by himself, unsupervised by an adult, like he just organized this whole thing, showing up by himself, hello, I'm here. It's just kind of a weird setup. But anyway, you have this creepy kid, and I get kind of what they were going for, but one of the flaws with this movie is the two kids look way too similar. They're both about the same height with both about the same hair. And boy, it was like, is that, what kid is that? Can you hold still? Let me see your face. But whatever. Now they have a kid. The two kids are running around and they start to notice some strange stuff happening. In particular, when they set up the laser grid, they notice something moving around. The father, being super unhelpful, thinks the kids just made it with those darn computers. And the teenagers say, something's up with this kid. There might be ghost or something. We should try to capture more evidence. And they do this thing where all the laptops, they put in there this program which will just make their webcams record all the time. Boy, I hope you're storing to a cloud, because that would be a lot of data. Anyway, though, because of this, the kids are kind of spying on their family, and I really don't like the first 3 Paranormal Activities, talking about the camera and the investigation was such a big, important thing. But now that they have to kind of keep it on the down low that they're investigating their parents, you don't really get as much talk about the cameras, which I really don't like. And also these laptop angles, I think when you have a camera that you mounted intentionally, it got a wider view of the house, and maybe that's it. Maybe they're just a little too low. There's just something about them that I'm not really clicking with, I don't know what it is. But anyway, and that's their excuse to have multiple static wides. And I will say, though, we don't get these static wides for the first act of the movie. Yeah, it kind of disappointing since that's what the series is known for. But whatever, there's no logical reason for them to be there. Oh well. Anyway, the scares in this movie, as I said earlier, the laser grid is pretty fun and there's a few good sequences, but I can't help but feel the scares are underwhelming. Oh look, the kid that we already know in the house is sneaking around or running past your doorway. That's not super scary. Oh, the kids are talking to imaginary friends. It done better in part 3. There's one scare I always remember where they lined up the toys. And the daughter's like, oh no, the toys are lined up. That's not particularly scary either, and it's just kind of disappointing. The best sequences, I think, are the 1 or 2 times in this film when they go to the house across the street where baby Robbie was supposed to come from. And that's abandoned because Katie's in the hospital and everything's covered in sheets and you're not supposed to be there. Those sequences were better, and I do like going over there. It's just a shame that the rest of the movie isn't as good as those sequences, and they're not top tier, but they're still pretty fun. And I don't want to spoil it, but the ending of the previous movies, especially 2 and 3, really went pretty big and pretty hard, and this was the first one where the ending just felt kind of underwhelming and I wish more happened. And I don't want to say exactly what, but some of the bigger moments did feel a little goofy, and part of that is because they did have CGI, and also there was some supposedly more intense moments. Like there's this scene where she's locked in the garage and the car's running and it's slowly poisoning her, and that just didn't really feel like a Paranormal Activity scene. That felt like some other movie, because Paranormal is supposed to be more low-key until it gets really creepy. And yeah, I don't know, it's just the scares weren't working. The scares combined with the intense feeling of disconnect, not really being super a part of the third one, and then the characters, the new characters that, you know, again, come about just for this movie and I'm supposed to really care about, just don't really do much for me. And it's not a terrible movie, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it is a found footage B-side in a series that didn't have any B-sides in it before. As it stands though, it's okay, but this is where you see the series start to break. I am kind of curious about parts 5 and 6 because I remember even less of those two, so it'll be kind of curious for a rewatch to see how I really think of them. So here's to going into those next. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my found footage movies playlist where you can see my reviews for the first 3 parts of the series, but also things like Rec and VHS and even the Paranormal Activity knockoff Paranormal Entities in there. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.